The sticky jumper is one of the most fun weapons available to Demoman, although I suppose calling it a weapon is a bit of a stretch. Its sticky bombs deal no damage to both the demo wielding the item as well as the enemy team because it was intended to be a tool for new players to learn how to sticky jump. Luckily for us, the unlock does not cease to be useful after you learn the basics of jumping. Because it deals no self-damage, a more experienced player can use it for extreme mobility. This mobility is the sole upside of the jumper. Obviously, a Demoman with the stock sticky bomb launcher can still sticky jump in the same fashion, but just a single jump will cost you around 1/3 of your base health. Of course, the health cost of stock can be mitigated by overheals and health packs, but in most situations, it is simply not practical to sticky jump during combat. Don't get me wrong, none of this prevents default demo from being an extremely effective class, but one can't help but be envious of soldier mains with their fancy gunboats and cheap rocket jumps. Enter the Sticky Jumper, the ultimate mobility tool for Demoman and arguably the strongest mobility item in the game. Not only can you jump for no health cost, but you also have 8 stickies in your clip, allowing you to use your primary without having to focus much on reloading. This allows for a roaming playstyle where you jump in, lob some grenades, and jump away when you have to, only to repeat the process over and over again. Ironically, this one and only upside of the Sticky Jumper stems from its lack of damage, which is also its primary downside. If you are used to the Sticky Bomb launcher, you will absolutely feel its absence. Your free movement really comes at the cost of the insane damage potential of the stock Sticky Bomb launcher. Now, is the ability to fly around the map like you own the place and take no damage in the process worth losing out on roughly 2/3 of your damage potential? Absolutely not, at least in the context of trying to win. While I could cherry pick some random situation where the Sticky Jumper is objectively better than stock, or simply over-exaggerate the item's viability, I will be honest. In the vast majority of times, the default Sticky Bomb launcher will greatly outperform its orange counterpart. That being said, there is one benefit that is not listed on the item card. Sticky jumping is really, really fun. So without any further ado, let's talk about how you can make this weapon look like it is actually strong. While I would actually consider the Sticky Jumper to be superior to the Rocket Jumper, it does have some unique downsides. The main downside is that the 0.7 second arm timer of a Sticky Bomb means that unlike Soldier, you can't instantly jump away. Your jumps will have to be planned out in advance in the form of putting a sticky down. You can greatly mitigate this weakness by simply placing down a sticky well before you intend to use it, although this is without its issues as well. Your bombs can be destroyed by hit scan bullets or anything else that can delete regular stickies, such as flare guns and the Quickie Bomb launcher. Furthermore, a sticky can be moved around by other explosives, which can throw off the trajectory of your launch. Fortunately, the majority of players are not skilled enough to make these downsides truly matter, and if the other team is actually really good, you can absolutely play around these issues. With that disclaimer out of the way, let me talk about movement. The really nice thing about movement is that it gives you a ton of options. With the roamer playstyle, you are able to do a decent job of filling in roles for your team when your team needs things to get done, but you are less specialized. A good example is comparing Sticky Jumper to Stock Demo. Stock Demo is a much better heal target because he still has stickies that deal damage, and during Ubers the downside to sticky jumping is entirely mitigated by the Uber charge. However, as a Sticky Jumper demo, you can play a combo role in a pinch because the grenade launcher is lethal in the right hands, and you also have the flexibility to rotate back to the flank very quickly, much more quickly than a demo with sticky bombs that can't afford the health cost to jump. Essentially, you can leverage your free movement to more quickly help your team pressure a weaker area or to reinforce parts of your defense, but you are generally less useful when you are actually there. I think it is important to point out that for this item to be worth equipping, you need to be using it quite often. If you are barely jumping around, then you would be better off using a shield or even stock, so sticky jump often. You should be able to use your jumps to buzz around the map like an annoying fly that the other team just can't swat. Avoid staying in one location for too long or your opponents may be able to trap you. I typically go for a hit and run playstyle because jumping in and staying grounded usually means that you will actually feel the lack of sticky bombs. Instead, stay moving and hard to hit. I find that the exception to this rule is if you manage to lodge yourself into a pretty strong position or if you're behind the enemy. If you feel like you can stand your ground, it can be worth it to commit. Most people know that a sticky jumper demo getting behind is almost an inevitability on some maps, such as Badwater or Upward. Straight up going behind and taking out a teleporter can sometimes be the role that your team needs you to fill, and being behind has the added benefit of setting you up to crunch the opponents as your team pressures from the front. Diving deep behind is often the most value you can provide your team, but there are definitely times when it is not worth it. The point I'm trying to stress is that doing exactly what I am saying you can do isn't the upside of this item. The real upside is the flexibility it gives you. You, the player playing, need to adapt to the situation and choose the correct option. I think dying as a jumper demo usually boils down to not making the right play because of how hard you are to pin down when you are playing your cards right. For example, a mistake I made a lot when I was first getting into this playstyle was acting like a soldier. They seem quite similar at a glance. 4 rockets, 4 pipes, a secondary that provides movement. So, because they are similar, if I do what works for Soldier, surely I will succeed with this loadout, right? This approach can work, but it lacks creativity and ignores the flexibility available to you. Instead of landing right by a target like a Soldier might, try to land above them, or behind them, or both. Remember that the typical spacing rules for a stock demo still apply to you. You would rather be at a mid-range to prevent taking self-damage, as well as to be slightly outside of your opponent's effective range. Of course, there are going to be some exceptions to the spacing rules. As usual, trading for important picks can be worth it, and with this loadout, closing the distance isn't going to be as much of an issue. That being said, I think that as a sticky jumper demo, you are uniquely able to avoid actually getting traded once you secure an important pick if you play your cards right, because you can just sticky jump away to safety. I think it is pretty obvious what primaries I prefer to run if you've watched the video up to this point, but I'll just say outright that I like the Iron Bomber and the stock grenade launcher the most. The lock and load is another good option for a sticky jumper demo, but I do think that the reduced clip size actually matters a whole lot more when you don't have stock stickies. Oh, and I'm kind of rushing here to get to a special melee weapon, but I don't recommend a loose cannon in tandem with the sticky jumper. You will be hearing more from me on this item relatively soon, so I'll just leave it at that. Okay, let's talk about melee weapons. In my opinion, the stock bottle and its reskins are going to be the best item to run in the slot, and to be honest, Demo's melees outside of Demo Knight are pretty lackluster. I suppose the Pain Train would actually be very strong if you queue for control points, but I play primarily Payload, King of the Hill, and a touch of Attack Defend, so I never use it. Speaking of never using things, I have scoured my clips folder for this video, and I cannot find a highlight where I actually use any melee weapon other than the one I'm going to talk about, so I guess that goes to show how unimportant melee is in the context of jumper demo. I think it would behoove you to basically never go for melee kills with this loadout. The main item I want to highlight in this section is the Ullapool Caber. I was originally going to make a separate video on just caber jumping, however, to be 100% honest, this is almost entirely useless, and it is really just a vehicle for getting really cool clips. The sticky jumper provides you with so much movement that dealing a large amount of splash damage to get the exact same movement is completely wasteful, unless of course you are going for flashy, over-the-top frags. I'll include a few jumps that I found to be sort of practical, since the only other instance of caber jumping that I've seen documented on YouTube is from 5 years ago. Well, I guess I should say there are plenty of people showing off caber jumping and caber knight jumping, but not using the sticky jumper into a caber jump where the caber is used almost like a rocket jump, if that makes sense. Okay, this playstyle is rather simple, just use your jumper, hit your grenades, and stay moving. There are a few less obvious things I want to point out that I think a lot of viewers may not know. Firstly, the sticky jumper, and the rocket jumper, actually ruin your crit heals. I've heard people say that as a jumper demo you shouldn't ever take a telly, and I would largely agree if there are other teammates who are respawning with you. However, if there is nobody around and the telly is level 2 or 3, taking it to preserve your crit heals can be a good decision. The sticky jumper will also start you on fire if you are covered in gas from the gas passer, so I'm guessing this is because of some source spaghetti where the jumper technically counts as damage but just a 0. If anybody who has dug through the game's code can shed some light on this, please let us know in the comments. I didn't mention this before, but the jumper limits you to 2 stickies at a time. You won't really need to use more than 2 at once, although there are a few jumps you can't do because of this limitation, such as a double single pre. At least, I think that's what this maneuver is called. Most people probably know this already, but you can use a sticky or 2 to prevent fall damage, which is usually worth it as long as you can spare the ammo. The last thing I want to mention is your choice in maps. Now, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I would highly recommend against using the sticky jumper on claustrophobic maps such as Dust Bowl or Junction. Actually, just do yourself a favor and just avoid Junction entirely. Large maps with a big skybox, open flank areas, and lots of health packs are going to favor the roaming sticky jumper playstyle for what I think are obvious reasons. Here, Badwater, Upward, and the new payload map Citadel are all great picks in my experience. Smaller maps are better for stickies or even a shield because you have less use for movement. Anyways, that's all I have to say now about the sticky jumper. I hope you liked the video.